Open the door and come on in, 'cause this is where the fun begins. You don't have to be a penny or a dollar to step inside Gelato's parlor. This podcast can pass a test, and you'll enjoy my special guest. Take a seat and close the door, and join Mr. Ray to find out more. So let's hear you holler. Welcome to Gelato's Parlor. With your host, Ray Gelato. That's me. That was the Gelato's Parlor theme tune. I hope you liked it. It was written by yours truly, Ray Gelato, your host of Gelato's Parlor. Now, I'm very excited this week. We've got an incredibly special guest. I can only describe this man as a human dynamo. He's the most wonderful clarinet player and all-round fantastic jazz entertainer in the best sense of the word. His clarinet is absolutely wonderful. He's such an impressive musician, and he's done so many things. Headlined at Ronnie Scott's, played with Wynton Marsarlis and the Lincoln Centre Jazz Orchestra, major jazz festivals in the UK and around the world. As I said, he really is a extraordinary musician. Mr. Adrian Cox also has a Facebook Live Sunday service show that he's built up during lockdown with a loyal and growing fantastic following. Anyway, we speak about all sorts of things. We speak about the clarinet, the saxophone, music, our philosophy on music, and I present you the wonderful Mr. Adrian Cox. And here's a sample of what he can do with Clarinet Marmalade.
Welcome to Gelato's Parlor. I'm absolutely delighted to have this fella on because he's a human dynamo and a ball of energy, as well as being an amazing musician and truthfully one of the greatest clarinet players I've heard, and I've had the pleasure of working with him, although not as much as I'd have liked. Want to welcome on our Zoom podcast, Gelato's Parlor, on Zoom, Mr. Adrian Cox. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, Ray. How are you, mate? Nice to see your face. I can see your face. It's good.
I can see yours too. Yeah, I'm not bad. I mean, it's lovely that we've kept in touch over this lockdown, and I've been watching with, pride in a way of what you've been doing, with your Sunday service and all those sort of things. And I was just saying how much of a, human dynamo you are with your energy. Just when we get started, how are you finding all this with your, your energy levels and your motivation and whatever?
Well, for me, well, that's nice of you to say. I've been watching yours as well, Ray. Of course, Coffee with Ray.
Don't watch
And all
too
yours.
closely.
I've seen your fingers, mate. No, but it was one of those things that as soon as the lockdown, the thing for me was when lockdown started back in March, I was due to have a holiday anyway. I was going off to New York for 3 weeks. So I sort of took the first 3 weeks as just sort of chilled out a bit and just went, all right, I'll eat loads of takeaway and actually have a bit of a rest. Then it became apparent this was in for a while. So then my brain just got into, right, because I always keep, my brain's got millions of ideas going on all the time. And it was actually a chance to start actually doing, I had some time to actually do some of them. And, you know, and you take an idea and run with it. If it doesn't work, you adapt, you find new things. And I'm quite a positive, I say quite a positive person. I'm a very positive person. So you know, I've been through some stuff in my life with, you know, drink and drugs and stuff like that. And, you know, now being clean and sober, it means that my brain can actually, I'm mad anyway. I didn't need any of that stuff. You know what I mean? So, but now my brain's sort of channeled into doing loads of stuff. So actually I found it, apart from all of the stuff that we know is bad, of everything, of death and, you know, people losing businesses and people mental health and stuff, that is a given that we know that is very bad. But on the other side of that, I think it's given a lot of chance for people to excel in ways they didn't know. You know?
Yeah, of having to dig deeper. Well, you see, I can relate to you because we don't know each other hugely well, but we had a long chat last week online, you know, about stuff. And what I find, you know, I have a lot in common with you is we're both high energy people,
Yeah.
and we have to keep doing things. And we don't. I mean, I do bleat and moan, but I don't sit around bleating and moaning with things like this, because you've just got to put your shoulders to the wheel and get going. And I noticed that in your music as well, because I was had the pleasure last year, just before this lockdown started, we played in Tenerife.
That was in February.
I've
Wasn't
never played with you. I'd heard you play, of course, and heard of you. And when I was beside you, but more listening to the sets you did out there on your own or with Rico when I was part of the audience, the thing that catches me is not just the musical, the technique you have, and it's the spirit of jazz. And I'm sorry, but there's so many great players that, in my opinion, don't have that. What I call that energy that you have inside you comes out when you play that clarinet, and it reaches the whole audience. And I'm just astounded by that, and I love to hear that in a young musician. It knocks me out, you know.
Well, I think I had a clarinet teacher. I don't know if you ever knew him. He was a guy called Jumping Jack Gilbert, and he was he played in a band called the Max Colley Rhythm Aces. I'll send you some of his stuff. It's incredible. Like his spirit of it, it's like
Please.
spirit is the word, and his technique's incredible. But his whole thing, and he taught me from I was 12 when I started lessons with him. He used to teach in the school, and he'd come in and do an hour. But the trouble was the other the four people in the lessons, they wouldn't practice. So the next week, go back, and they had got. Am I allowed to swear, Ray?
Yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
could edit it out if it's too graphic anyway,
Right.
but go ahead, mate.
Okay. Well,
Be yourself.
The others couldn't give a fuck about practicing, and what the difference was, I was coming home, getting up 2 hours before school to practice, and coming home from school and practicing and going out doing gigs with my dad's band, doing this, you know. And he taught me from years ago. He's like a classic thing of saying, you know, when you're playing, it doesn't matter if there's one person there or 1,000 people there. You've got to connect with them. That's the main thing. Is what you're doing. You've got to be able to get across to those people. And if there's that one person who sat there looking miserable, try and make them feel good. Or if the mood needs to be, take them to a place where they feel a bit miserable anyway, you know, and go, oh God, he must mean that, you know. And so that's something that's really stuck with me. And he was a great performer, a great entertainer, and people loved him. And not just on a musical side of thing. He made it very important. One thing he said was, when you get to a gig, make sure you go around and speak to everybody. He said, speak to everybody in the room. And one of the things that which is great, was he always says, if you start a conversation with someone in the room, like you've started a conversation with them, and then you're going to continue it with them in the break or at the end of the gig. He said, one, it means they won't go home because they got to finish that conversation with you. He said, but two, you've started a conversation which you can continue in your music when you're playing as well. And you've already made everyone feel comfortable. And I think that's something that you certainly do is, you know, you make everybody feel comfortable. And I think that's just as important as, you know, the music sometimes. I see it at Ronnie's. People go to Ronnie's and they've never been to a jazz club, or they've certainly not been to a jazz club where they're told, right, sit down and please don't talk. Or and so if you can go in there and go, hey, everybody, how you doing? Lovely to see you all. It's something very simple of just making everyone feel grounded and like, oh, okay, right, this is okay. We're all okay.
Well, what you do is you've just said something interesting, because again, I feel, you know, that musically, as well as the philosophy of the performance aspect of it, that you and I have so much in common, because I like to look at it in the same way, that it ain't me. A lot of performers, it's them on the stage and it's the audience. To me, it's not that. To me, it's all of us in one big party together. I don't mean, you know, party act, but it is. We're all part of it together. We're all part of this whole thing. And the talking to the audience is important. The meeting the people are important. And, you know, I mean, I learned by watching people like Lionel Hampton. I saw him many times, Lionel Hampton.
Oh, wow.
And you're not going to get a better musician, or Illinois Jacquet, a tenor player. Yeah. But these people knew how to put it across. They'd sing a couple of songs, you know, they'd do a couple of things like The Birth of the Blues or whatever. And then they'd play a burning solo, and then they'd have the, you know, the whole thing was like a review. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't just a gig. And I think that's, it's a lost art, mate. And there's not a huge amount of us doing that. But it's just you know, you can certainly hear you've practiced, but you can hear that you've listened to a lot of great people. Like, you know, I was just reading that your favourite guys. What does Edmund Hall mean to you? The clarinet player, Edmund Hall. You know, in a nutshell.
So Edmund Hall, basically, for me, I would have loved to have met him. He's playing. He's got an incredible sound, right? He's just got a massive sound. And just to let you know, so I've just had somebody. It's so funny. I've just had a mouthpiece built for me, and I was trying to explain to the guy. I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. That's one person I hope doesn't listen to it. Right?
I'll make sure he does.
Right. But I said to him, I think you'd know him as well anyway. But I said to him, I said, right, here's the thing. I said, I play this mouthpiece. I play this. I said, I'm looking for something a little bit bigger than what I've got. There's not one on the market. I just need it a bit bigger, and I need this. And then this person came back to me and explained to me all the reasons why I shouldn't have that, and then told me who he thought had a big sound and thought this. And he was talking about Benny Goodman and people like that.
Yeah.
And I was saying, no, Benny Goodman has a sound and has this. Edmund Hall has a totally different level of sound. It's like a whole wall of, you know, and you can actually feel when he plays, I totally relate to it. It's just giving it one, but not in that way of just being loud and brash.
No, not just honking, but playing. Yeah.
It's clarinet playing. It's got, it's so much that it like touches you. You listen to it and you go, yeah. And it's one of those things where you go, why don't other people play like that? Why has no one else gone, wow, that's amazing? Because everyone who hears it goes, wow, his playing's incredible. But, you know, he was with Louis Armstrong All-Stars from 1955 to 1958, favourite band, you know, with Trummy Young and Lewis.
Sure.
The three of them together, I mean, imagine turning up with a clarinet next to them two. You know, it's like, you've got to be able to give it one. But for me, I listen to him and I can never understand why he wasn't a massive megastar, you know. But
well, the trouble is, you see, that in jazz, certain players get the ones who are the popular ones. You know, you're talking about John Coltrane, Miles Davis. There's one of these people like Sonny Rollins and Benny Goodman on clarinet, aren't you sure? And you've got a whole slew of players that have been forgotten in the annals of time. And I'm like you. I like to squirrel these guys out. People like Charlie Ventura and Jerry Jerome, and saxophone players like Georgie Auld, Flip Phillips, that are forgotten. You know, they're not spoken about. And what you've just said about Edmund Hall, I understand, because certain players hit you right in the heart. And it's almost like, how can I put it? You want to emulate them, but you also need to get your own stuff. But what you said about that mouthpiece is important, because, you know, I've always, as you know, loved that big sound, that big, wide open, what I call that Texas tenor sound.
Well, to finish that story,
go.
The guy's made me a mouthpiece to what he thinks is a big sound. to what would be a big sound. And it arrived yesterday, and I put it on and I blew it, and I only had to pick it up to know it is never going to ever work.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I said from the start. And now I'm having to send it back and getting him to make it to exactly what I asked at the start. You know,
no, it's a very, I mean, equipment, you know, the sound in the end comes from you, but the equipment facilitates it. And I'm realizing I see so many players, I've played so many players setups, I close them up. I'm like, what's that? To me, you got to drive that thing, man. It's like an Aston Martin. They say the Aston Martin's a harder car to drive, but it's such satisfying because a new car works for you. And I look at it, the equipment, same with me, what I use, it's a hard setup. You know, I use a big open mouthpiece and a reasonably stiff reed.
But you like to feel you've worked for it.
I feel I'm working for that sound,
You create the sound. And that's what I find with clarinet is people have, it was brilliant. I was at Van Doren in France, in Paris, and the guy, I took a mouthpiece to try, and then I said, can I have a 3.5 reed? And then he said, oh, no, you shouldn't use a 3.5 reed with this. You won't get any sound out of it. I was just like, right, challenge accepted. Fuck you. and then I put it on and I blew it and he came through. It's like, oh, you should be using a 1.5 with this. I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, because I think a lot of these guys that we like, you know, they were using setups that had to get over bands with no microphone, no amplification. And it's like the old bass players with the big gut strings. You had to make a goddamn noise. And you know, also I noticed when you played in Tenerife, and again, we got similarities. I don't like to use a microphone if I can get away with it. And you didn't. And because you get that, it's harder, but to me, you play better ideas without that damn microphone sound coming back at you. And you're driving the instrument to the back of the room, driving the sound.
I always think a thing with the microphone, wherever I play, I mean, obviously I understand the fact that if you're playing in a big place, you have to have a microphone. I'm not silly, you know. But the way I like it is to have a microphone that generally I say just set us up a vocal mic at vocal level for me. And what I'll do is I'll play on that microphone from my clarinet, but I know exactly where to be. And I want the clarinet to be picked up. So there's going to be a wall of sound. I'm making all the hand gestures, but no one can see that. But just to let you know, it's really good. But there's, you know, you make a wall of sound and you just want something to just pick that wall of sound up.
You're right.
What, you know, close smoking for me, never, you know, and monitor engine or sound engineers who end up riding go. But I tell you, when I did, this isn't a name dropping thing, but when I did the Barbican, the jazz at Lincoln Centre.
Yeah, I wanted to get onto that, but now you brought it up. That's really good.
Well, so background, it was the Benny Goodman 80-year celebratory concert of the Carnegie Hall thing, and myself and Giacomo Smith were invited as to play the concert with jazz at Lincoln Centre, Wynton Marsarlis. Anyway, so when we got there, the guys, their sound engineer was like, okay, can you just come on stage, just a sound check? And I just blew 2 notes and he just came up. He's like, hey man, he's like, you stay away from my microphones. He said, we don't need any microphone on him, nothing, which was great. And I've got some people took some recordings and you can, and it's not that I'm blasting and just going, bah, 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 but it was like, it was saying the sound. And
no, it's a sound that projects. A sound that projects does not have to be a loud sound. It's a different thing. And a big sound doesn't have to be. I've heard players with deafening sounds that have a thin, weedy tone, but it's loud. You see what I'm saying? It's a difference.
Power and thing comes from underneath. It's like,
absolutely.
You don't have to hear it. You just have to feel it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we're just loud bastards, me and you.
Yeah. Maybe someone else is doing a podcast going, have you heard them too?
Yeah, idiots. But you know, it's funny because again, when I played the Blue Note New York with an American band. Gunter, our piano player, come out with me a few years. We've done it a few times, and we use a band based out of Philly. And the sound man's done everybody from Tony Bennett to all you know, he's the regular guy there. And he was really grumpy at first, you know, that what I call that sort of jazz attitude. I'm not, you know, blind, but again, because I've always concentrated on sound, and I played something, I think a few bars of Flying Home in the sound check. And he came up, even before we did the gig, and said, man, he goes, you don't hear that tenor sound anymore. He goes, I'm not going to have to do anything with you on the microphone. Same thing. And he was really complimentary. And I thought, this is a guy that started off as a bit of a shit and attitude. And then just purely because he heard that sort of old, that sort of Hawkins kind of old tone. He loved it, and he said,
Yeah,
he goes, as good as the players are that come here, they don't play that way anymore. They don't play that, and it's lovely to hear. It's a little thing that can make you feel good.
Yeah. When and that's the thing. You've got a lovely sound, Ray. It's always, and the thing is, it's always consistent. That's what I like. It's not to do. Some people can sound good in a good room.
Yeah. Yeah,
But you've got that great sound.
Mate, I've got to sound when I'm doing those coffee shows. I've got to sound good in my kitchen, which is the most acoustically horrible room. It's all tile, so it echoes. And I've also learned another skill over this lockdown of actually playing so quietly, but still with the tuning and still with a good sound. And that was something, because I've always played in louder bands. It was something I never quite mastered, and I've realised playing that volume. That's what a lot of these guys were doing, like Ben Webster. They were playing quietly with a full sound, and you get a different, you get a completely different color out of that instrument.
So I'm gonna ask you, so after, because I did a bit of that because my girlfriend was getting up a bit later than me I got into this crazy routine of getting up at 6 a.m. doing this, and then starting practice, doing like 5 hours practice, starting at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I had to play quietly. So I was playing really quiet. And then suddenly I went and did my first live stream gig, like the first, and when I came to play, and I blew, it was quite an amazing thing to do that first gig with other people. I think it was July the 4th was the first gig that I did with some people, Joe Webb and all that. But then when I blew, I was like, oh wow, my lips weren't ready for it actually blowing properly.
Same.
So I'd got this sound like down to
same.
Yeah, and I just wondered what it was like for you because your first one was the 100 Club, wasn't it?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same. The 100 Club wasn't so bad because it wasn't so far away from the beginning of the lockdown. But the last live stream I did, which was with a small band with Elliot Henshaw and Gunter in Elliot's little studio just after Christmas, January, I found it a nightmare because the band were playing. It was a small studio and it was quite loud. Yeah. And God's sake, when I was playing full volume, it just didn't sound right because I'd been used to playing this almost because again, I got my kids studying here as well. So they're saying, Dad, I'm even playing with a rag down my bell a lot of the time. And I tell you, but when about halfway through that live stream, I felt my chops get sore a little bit when you get that slight tuning and uncontrolled feeling. And I haven't had that. And that's simply the same thing.
That's all from practice. That's all from, obviously, it's something that we're so used to doing all the time.
The gig muscle, Adrian. We're losing the gig. I mentioned this on Simon Spillett's post. He put a post on Facebook, and he was saying about the chops. And I said, listen, this is something that you're never hearing anywhere, really, but pro musicians know it. And the same with singing. The gig muscle is something that starts to go. So we've still got our chops and we can still play. But when that what I call that gig muscle is that real power that you only can develop. You only can develop it playing with bands. You can't develop it practicing at home.
Yeah, you can't do it practicing at home because you can't because sonically you can't set that up at home. You're always playing solo. You're always going to hear it all different. So check this. So this is all right. Mouthpiece talk, but I got a mouthpiece when we were in Tenerife. So I had that mouthpiece. That was a new mouthpiece I got, and I was like, wait. And then all through lockdown, I'd been playing on this mouthpiece, going, wow, this is brilliant. This is great. I love it. And then the first gig I go out and do, it was completely uncontrollable playing. And that was the thing, like the gig muscle, as you're saying. It wasn't ready for it. It was like,
well, I've got a theory with mouthpieces because I'm a serial effer about, all right. And now I basically, again, it's good to be technical when we can talk like this. Hopefully we're not boring the audience, but I don't think we are because it's important. But I've been a messer about. When I was in the Chevalier Brothers many years ago, I stayed with the same mouthpiece for 7 or 8 years, and I never thought about it, and it was absolutely beautiful. Never thought. Then I got in the routine for years. Then the last 3 years, I forced myself to stay on the same old Otto Link that I've always played, and I started to get the real control back. I wasn't thinking. Then over this lockdown, because I'm paranoid about my sound, I've started messing about again, and you do not know where you are. You're on one mouthpiece and you think, this is fantastic. It's from the 1940s and I'm sounding like my heroes. And about a week, it sounds great. Then I used to say this to Alex Garnett, the honeymoon period's over and it turns against you. It turns against you.
It's funny, isn't it? You wake up one day and you go down, I have it
the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I have it with clarinets. Like I get, and I start getting, my brain starts going, he says something wrong. And actually, generally, every time there has been something wrong with my clarinet, either it's cracked, or I crack a lot of instruments, just through the sheer volume of playing and, doing 280 gigs a year, and practicing all day long. But yeah, it's funny when you start changing gear and doing stuff, because I was saying to the guy who sorts all my stuff out, I was like, I didn't have this problem when I was drinking. I'll tell you that, because I wasn't thinking about it. I was just getting pissed.
Yeah.
So, that'll be all right tomorrow. Fuck it.
It is that honey, but it's like a muscular thing, because you think something is the new wonder. Oh yeah, this is great for like and then that bizarre thing, the muscles, and psychologically it turns against you. So I've forced myself now to say, go back on what was working for you for the 3 years. And everybody was saying the last 3 years I was actually sounding better and more. I think my playing developed because I wasn't messing about. All that time with mouthpiece and reeds I was messing about with, I could have been learning a Don Byas solo or doing something. But the best players I ever heard, it's an important point, the worst players I ever heard of the greats, and I'm not mentioning names, were the ones that constantly and utterly messed about every time. I will say it. I love Sonny Rollins. He's one of my favourite players. I mean, that guy crystallised that whole Coleman Hawkins thing, but brought it up to date with the bebop. Anyway, but he's a serial messer about with mouthpieces. Every time you looked at the guy, he had a plastic with this one, and his chops went. Maybe his chops went for physical things, but so the last few years or 30 years, I can't stand Sonny's sound. I love what he plays, but it's been that. It's still a big sound, but it just sounds unfocused. When I mentioned it before, when I saw Illinois Jacquet play, he had the same damn mouthpiece that he swapped with Dexter Gordon when he was with Lionel Hampton in the early 40s. And he said that, he goes, I swapped it with Dex on the bandstand, and he had the same mouthpiece and same horn, and he sounded the same. When I say the same, I don't mean playing, back what he's playing back then.
Monotonous,
But the tone was consistently rich and gorgeous. Another guy was Sam Butera, Louis Prima's band leader, saxophone. I saw him in Vegas. I went at a peek at the saxophone, and I saw the same mouthpiece I saw on the cover, this old Berg Larsen with a white bit on it. And I said, Sam, I didn't know him. I said, is that the same mouthpiece you have with Louis? He goes, yeah, babe, he said, and it's too damn late now to change. That's what he said. And all those guys that stuck to the similar equipment, they just seem to sound consistent. And the mucker about us, and I've seen a lot of some of the greats, they seem to just lose something. Can't describe it. Don't know.
I think you can get, it's like you say, down the rabbit hole of getting into gear and doing that. And I never was one of those people. I was just like, right, get the horn out, set it up, probably left the reed on there for like 3 days, clean the mouthpiece out, immediately regret it. Yeah. It's like, then you got to start getting your sound again.
Yeah, that's right. Because all the crowd, like, you get.
Yeah, but I mean, but I suppose over lockdown, but it's great because I've learned loads of new techniques. I started having lessons reading music as well. But a mate of mine was like, are you still not reading music? I was like, no. And he's like, right, that's it. We're going to have lessons. And so I had lessons with him once a week for about 12, 14 weeks, something like that. And then at Christmas, I was lucky enough to do one of the, Guy Barker had his Christmas at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah.
And he was one of the sort of only 6 concerts that happened, and so we did that. But, I got sent the chart, and not that Guy knows that I don't read. And he's like, well, you read enough, don't you? And I always go, oh, yeah. And then he sends me a chart, and I'm like, oh, God.
You and I are the same.
But
Never read.
This year was better. I didn't feel fazed by it. I got it. And, of course, with Giacomo Smith, who can read, great. I just had a day with him, sat down. I said, right, come on, Giacomo, just tell me what's happening. And then he's going, oh, yeah. He said, well, you know what's happening there. Yeah. Look, it's obvious it's that. And then you go, oh, yeah, and you put it all together. He said, and by the way, he said, when you play, he said, just start at the right point and finish at the right point, you're fine.
You got, mate, again, we've got a lot in common because I've always been a terrible reader. I believe now, and I'm not making excuses, I've got some kind of dyslexia with music because when I look at it, it looks like a jumble, like, normal kids who have this with the word. And I'm sure, but Pete Long did the same with me way back in the 90s. He says, I want you in my Echoes of Ellington band. I said, I don't read. He goes, I don't care about that. He goes, you got the style I need. So he sent me all the charts. And I studied them along with the original Ellington records, the same as what you were saying, 4, 5, 6 hours a day to get it. And I got it. Yeah. I got them down, but
Yeah.
and my reading got a lot better. Then he'd pull new charts out. I was never at the level of Colin Skinner or Pete or anyone like that, but it got better. Now I can't read for shit. I've not done it. In fact, if they pull a new chart out in the Giants, if we get, I'll always say to Ollie Wilby, Ollie, I'll say, mate, play it for me once, will you? He plays it once, I'm okay. But
it's funny that
I'm
thing.
awful reader.
I do, when someone says to me about reading, they go, "Oh yeah, but surely you must prefer it because I bet you're glad you did it this way round and not the other way round." And I suppose there's perks of, there's obviously something in my playing that appeals because I haven't been a reader. But then saying that, I know people who read absolute fly shit and are absolute monstrous players. Garnet.
There's no rhyme or reason.
There's no rhyme or reason. And all I know is that if I get a gig, Guy Barker's gig, I've basically spent 10 days learning those charts, right? And going over it, practicing every day, 6-7 hours a day. Whereas so basically it's a massive time saver if you're able to read.
Of course it is. I found the same thing. But when I say I wasted the time with Pete's band, the Echoes of Ellington, Plong's band, I didn't, because I got inside those charts. But there was times when he was pulling new things out in the early days where I'd just say to Ian Dixon, Ian, swap me your part and I'll please read it. And you know what? All those great guys like Peter Ripper, Ian Dixon, who was a wonderful tenor player, Colin Skinner, Jay Craig, Bob Hunt, they were amazing to me, absolutely amazing. They said, well, so what? They says, Johnny Hodges didn't read. A load of Ellington guys didn't. They said you read better. He goes, but it's what we said on that conversation the other day. It's the end result that matters. And if you get it down at the end, it's a bloody waste of time not reading.
Hey, look, if it's taken me, I've had to put in 35, 40 hours of learning to try. But then saying that, I often doing the Barbican thing with Jazz at Lincoln Centre. It was hilarious, just walking on the stage, and then they said, "All right, here's your music and music stand," and I was just like, "I just don't need it," and I quite liked that.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh no, don't worry about that." And it's like I've learned all the parts. It's fine.
So you learnt those parts in advance, yeah?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing with that is I was on tour with Bad Manners in we were out in South America. So we got a huge following in South America, and we've been out we were just about to fly out for a 6-week tour of South America and North America. And the day before we left, I got a phone call saying, "Are you free?" It was from an agent. It was like, "Are you free on the 27th and 28th of February?" And I was like, "I'm on a South American tour." I said, "Where's the gig?" And they said, "Well, it's in London." I was like, "Right, okay." I said, "What is it first?" And they said, "Oh, well, it's a good one." They said, "It's with Wynton Marsarlis, Jazz at Lincoln Centre, Barbican." I was like, "Right, okay, yeah." I said, "I'm going to do it." And it turned out that we had 3 days off with Bad Manners. Right over this time, 4 days off. We had this, and so I finished a gig in Guadalajara on the Saturday night in Mexico, and then 8 o'clock in the morning I flew to Mexico City, then flew from Mexico City to LA, and then from LA straight to London. Got picked up at Gatwick, Addison Lee, straight to the Barbican where it was snowing. I got out of the taxi, which was we were like half an hour late. I walked straight into the Barbican Centre, sit down, and they go, "Oh, they're ready for you on stage." So I done all of that travelling, and it was now 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the Monday.
I couldn't have done that. I don't know how you would have done that. My mind would have been toasted.
Well, I opened up the clarinet case, and the funny thing was, there's all of the Lincoln Centre guys, and I'm wearing like baseball cap, white Doc Martin boots, like looking like scruff bag. I think I had this jacket on. I was just like, "All right, lads." So they're like, "Right, do you need a music stand?" It's like, "No, it's all right." And I had like triple bags under the eyes, and we played, and we did the rehearsal and all that, and everything was, it was really good, brilliant, loved it. And then the next night we did the concert. And then first thing the next morning, I flew straight back to New York, and then straight to Guatemala and El Salvador. And then went back on tour with. So I literally came off the tour for 4 days back to London. But all the time I was on tour in Mexico, each day I was going through these charts and learning all this stuff, and just
Unbelievable story, mate. That the stamina. Just the last thing on that, and I want to get on when you mentioned bad manners, because we'll finish with a bad manners thing. Because I think after 45 minutes, my Zoom thing might cut out because I ain't got the.
Right.
But it's been so honestly incredible things. But just how did you find Wynton Marsarlis himself? I'm just interested. You don't have to say now, but you know.
So this is
How did he treat you?
Oh, fantastic! So I played. Because on the first day, I did 3 of the tunes that I was doing. We rehearsed them, did it fine. He didn't say anything at all. In the rehearsal, he was chatting to the drummer, like telling him what to do and how he wanted to play. And then I was just walking off the stage, and I just felt this like punch in the side of me. Gave me a punch in the arm. He was like, "Yeah, man, that's the shit." He's like, "That's it. Your sound is huge." He's like, "It's brilliant." And the best thing was, after all these years of playing that. The first thing he said, I can hear them all your instruments. He says, I can hear Edmund Hall, I can hear George Lewis, I can hear that, but he's like, I can hear you. He's like,
what a beautiful thing to say.
And that was it. And I was just like, and as soon as he said that, it made me feel really pleased. It's like, you know, I'm there doing the thing I love, playing clarinet, and someone of his stature, you know, to come up and to pick out, and like, I can hear all the Edmund Halls, the George Lewis, you know, all the old New Orleans guys. He's like, that's the sound. You've got that massive sound. He said, you're filling up this whole room. Yeah. And he's like, you know, all the Lincoln Centre guys are amazing. You know, they're at that band is ridiculous. And to play with it, it's that thing of not loud, it's the power.
Yeah.
And you feel it. And all the brass section, when we went out and did it again in New York, you know, it was great. All the horn section, they were Walter Blandin and that. He was like, he says, have you been to the Van Doren studio yet? And I was like, no. He's like, you've got an endorsement with them, haven't you? And I was like, no, I haven't. He's like, oh man, we need to hook you up, sort that out. You know, then the next thing I'm round there, they're giving me free stuff. I'll come back to the UK, then I've become a Van Doren artist, you know, and it was like, it was so nice, you know, but so that my experience of that whole band and playing with them, you know, get to do it twice in a year was amazing, you know, and I keep in contact with them, and they, you know, Wynton had said, he said, we're on the road most of the time, so we don't get to see what's going on. He said, but he said, we'll help you however you want, whatever. He said, if you want to come and do a gig at Dizzy's, just let us know. And so I did, you know, and I took the Profoundly Blue Edmund Hall concert. We went and did it out there in July 2019.
Yeah.
We did 2 houses there. And even in lockdown, Dizzy's Jazz at Lincoln Centre got in touch with me and said, hey, would you like to do one of your Sunday services via Dizzy's? I don't know if you know I did that, but so
I don't. No.
Yeah, I did a live stream, me and Joe Webb, via Dizzy's Club in New York. You
know what? Ain't that beautiful? And you know what? My theory. One, you're a great player, but it's what we went back. I'm going back to the beginning of our conversation. Is if you develop a sound, what I call a personal sound, but that just some beautiful where you're looking at that sound as your first kind of port of call, people will love it. That's what Wynton heard, that sound. You know, I know the notes are important and all that, but it's that sound that people just love, that grabs you. It's like Enrico, you know, when Enrico Tommaso plays, he's got that instantly recognizable sound that grabs people. And it's something that is not emphasized enough. It's
no, and I think what it is I always say I tried to make my music and my sound of what I do as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, you know, I love it. I love people saying, I hate jazz, but I love what you do. It's brilliant.
I've heard that a million times. But you also sing as well. So when I saw you, right, you did a couple, and again, you're not afraid to kind of put that side of your personality across, and it works. So it's just so bloody musical, and again, it makes the concert accessible. You know, just quickly, how do you feel about that? The vocal side of it, what you do?
Well, see, I never see myself as a singer. I never go, oh yeah. When people go, oh, you're a singer. So no, what I do is, if I like a song or I've got a song, I think, oh, that's a brilliant song. Oh, I'm going to sing that. That is how far as it goes. I really want to sing it because I think the words are brilliant and it's a great song. So I'm going to sing it because I love it. And I think that's, but you know, I love it when people go, oh, I love your singing. It makes me laugh. I piss myself. Like, oh, I love your vocals.
They've said that to me for 35 years. And I'm not, as I've said to you, I'm not a singer. I'm a musician that sings. You know,
Yeah,
and the same. It's the same thing. In fact, most of my favourite singers have been the musicians. Wingy Manone, Roy
Wingy
Eldridge.
Manone, yeah.
Oh, it's a killer. Just listen, because we just in case we cut, if we cut out, by the way, and I'll keep this in. I can reboot and just finish off what was. But I just wanted to finish off because we've said so many fantastically interesting things about your musical career and the accolades, the well-deserved accolades, and the online stuff. But finally, right, Bad Manners, one, playing in the band, and two, you are their manager. How? Why? Where?
So my mate Tony Rico, he was with Bad Manners. I think he joined them in the late 90s. And then he left them and then he rejoined. And, you know, big party animal band, as you know, because you used to do those university balls with them, didn't you? And stuff.
Oh, I remember them being as mad as we were crazy as well. When they were mad, I think Dougie was madder than us.
Yeah, I mean, Bad Manners, it really
marginally
is what it says on the tin, you know. So so I joined. Tony Rico phoned me up and said, "Here, mate," he's like, "Do you want to do some Bad Manners shows? Maybe," he said, "I'm going to drink myself to death pretty soon." He's like, "Do you want to share the work?" So I was like, "Yeah, all right." So my first tour was of Russia, and I think I had like 5 liters of vodka in 4 days. You know, incredible. You know, I came back, ended up in hospital. It's great.
Great.
So I went on tour with them, and I joined them. It was brilliant. And then it was the person who was managing him at the time just said, "Fuck this." And no one's managed him for more than like a year at a time or a year and a half. And Doug said to me, he goes, "You're pretty good at managing yourself." He said, "How about, do you want to manage Bad Manners?" I was like, "Oh, fucking hell." He's like, "Yeah, but you like, you know," he said, "You get a percentage, you get this." And I was like, "Okay, well, fuck it then. I'll book a tour." And I booked the Christmas tour in 2010. And then I've been his manager ever since, and set up all the tours all around the world: Australia, New Zealand, Japan, North America, South America, Central America, Europe. And of course, big sort of 6-week tours in the UK. And so I, you know, and basically, as Doug says as well, I said to him, I said about somebody once, I was like, "Oh, fucking hell, they can't sing." And he went, "I've made a whole living out of not being able to sing."
Yeah, but people like it.
You know, they love him. You know, he's someone who, he wants everyone to be smiling. He wants, you know, and Bad Manners up until obviously the lockdown, you know, still doing 140 shows a year.
Nice.
And I don't do all of the shows now. I cherry pick. You know, I generally don't go and play in Scunthorpe, but I might go and do Buenos Aires, you know.
But the amazing thing is, you've just said, so you're going from playing with Wynton Marsarlis and the greats, and even greats here like Giacomo Smith and your own thing, and we've been to Bad Manners. How do you find the music? I bet you any money you enjoy it, yeah?
Oh yeah, I love it. And the thing is, it all again comes from the same place. You know, when we're in the bandwagon on tour, you know, but we're listening to like Louis Jordan, you know, and that's Doug's favorite thing is Louis Prima. You know, that's he loves it, and he knows all the words to everything. And actually, there's a little project that he wants to do, a little sideline thing where he wants to do a load of that Prima stuff, but as a little 5-piece. He's like with me to put a little band together.
Be fantastic.
And he's like, I just want to do it for me. But it's funny, you know, because he's really nervous about doing it. He's going, "Oh, but I'm fucking worried about that." I'm like, "Oh, fuck off, Doug. Come on, man." You know, yeah, but he's a great guy. He's an entertainer. He has you know, I learn a lot from him. He has 100% of time for everybody. He'll give everybody their time. You know, after a gig, all he wants is 15 minutes of not seeing anyone. But then he will hang out with anyone. People come in and they go, "Oh, Doug, do you remember in 1987 after that gig we went and had this pint in the pub and we did that? And do you remember, and you were doing this trick with you were opening beer bottles on your eye socket?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember the pub down in here." You know, he ain't got a fucking clue, but you know, he makes them all feel fucking special. And one thing he said was years ago when the Rainbow Club in Finsbury Park, when they had done a big concert there and they finished, and they were meant to get in a tour bus to go off, but there was like 2,000 people at the concert, and he refused. The record company, I think it was Magnet or whatever, were trying to get him to get in the tour bus to go, and he refused to go until he had signed everyone's record.
You know, that's a beautiful thing when you hear that about an artist. And you know what? when you just said you like to meet people, I'm the same. I'll sit there at Ronnie's in that foyer, and I've got another set to go. I'm covered in sweat. I'm tired. I'm out of breath,
Yeah.
and I'll make sure I sign everyone's album even before. Once in a blue moon, I've gotten grumpy, and I'll tell you something just very quickly. This is about you. It's not about me, but it's important as it ties in. I was in Umbria Jazz with my family. I've done it 12 times, Umbria Jazz. They kept asking us back, and I did it 2 years ago, and I brought my family out. And they had us doing a lunchtime concert and then a late concert, and I was very tired. And I wanted to just spend a bit of time with my family having a drink afterwards, because my son was 15 at the time, and he was just starting to, And I was stopped on the way back because the square was packed, literally hundreds of times. Foto, the Italians are very, very, they're lovely, but they're a bit pushy, And the last one, I said, no. I said, I'm really sorry. I'm with my family. I need to get back to the hotel, please. And I feel bad about it to this day. Isn't it funny? And my daughter still says, Dad, you were real shit to them that night. And I say, no, I was. And I was just overtired. You know when you get overtired? And I do, as the sort of person I am, I still feel that I would like to apologise to that couple or whoever they were and just say, I want to give you the photo.
It's a funny thing that I think it's so important. I've got a friend who did a gig, and I went to watch his gig, and he was on a downer. He was a bit on a downer that there wasn't many people there. A place that holds 100 people, and there was about 25 people. And afterwards, he just went, "Oh, mate, rubbish," and just went off. And then the next day, he spoke to me, and he was like, "Oh, what did you think of the gig then?" I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "The gig was fantastic. The music was great. You played brilliantly." I said, "But afterwards, you should have, there was 25 people there. They were the people who did come to your gig.
They had paid. They'd made the effort.
They are your fan base. They are the ones who came. You should chat to them. And 25 people isn't a lot. You go around and go, hey, thanks so much for coming tonight. Shame there isn't more people here, but really pleased you were able to make it. How did you find out? Did you, and I think some people think that success has to be either lots of people or lots of money or lots of sales. Success can be making one person really as happy as,
you're right.
Someone come up to me and go, that's that, when someone go, that I was crying when you played that. Thank you so much. It's like, of course, fucking hell, it wasn't that bad, was it? But if someone's saying that, it's incredible, and I think in this lockdown thing, people have been able to comment more and send, donations. People sending donations. It's ridiculous,
You really realise the positivity and the kindness, we of people in this lockdown. It's been incredible, and that is another thing about success. It ain't about the fame and that. It's keeping going. It's keeping going and having that longevity, and it's reaching people. You can reach the people and they like you, and you're doing something right.
Yeah, that's it. That's when people have said to me, oh, people who don't know me, they say, what do you do for a living? I say, I play music. I'm a musician. Oh, are you successful? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I am. I play music for a living. Do you know what I mean? I get to play music, my interpretation of something, and people like it enough that they give me money, and I'm able to survive on that, which is brilliant. And and I think when it comes from that part, that, when someone goes, oh, I'm going to do a lot. I've seen it in lockdown. Oh God, I'm going to have to do a live stream to make some money. Right. Well, I'm afraid you're doing it. Right. Okay. Yes, that helps. But it's the wrong attitude. It should be like, hang on a minute. I'm normally used to performing. I'm going to do a performance, and I'm going to put my PayPal up. If some people do donate to me, that's brilliant. But I feel, because you'll feel richer for giving people.
You're right. You're right.
It's more important than money. Yeah. Money is a bastard. I've got a friend who I do stuff at his studio, and he makes it look beautiful, and it's great. Down at Gun Hill Studios, and it's fantastic. And he's an old mate of mine, Rupert, funnily enough, who used to play. He plays trumpet, but he played with Bad Manners, and also he used to play with Jack Gilbert, my my clarinet teacher. So we have this connection of like how you should be as a. And I go, how much money do you need, Rupert? He's like, oh, I hate the money bit. Like, just turn away, turn back, and tell me how much you're going to give me. And then it's like, all right, I'm going to give you £200. Is that all right? Yeah, that's brilliant. Great. Yeah. Right. And so it's, but I think there's been lots of, although, and talking to you is good, because I know the other day you said, oh, I'm struggling. You said, I'm struggling a little bit on this. And within about 30 seconds of talking, it was like, oh no, actually, and it just turns around, and it can just take having a conversation with someone.
It can, and positivity. But mate, I don't want the audio to go off on this in case it goes. But I'll tell you what, you've been the most interesting guest, and I'm not just saying this, and I don't often, like to blow smoke or accolade, but you're an incredibly inspiring person, even more after hearing your stories of the energy. And listen, mate, keep going. And I'll tell you what, we got so many other things to say. We're gonna have to do a part 2 of this, Adrian.
Yeah, definitely.
It's going to be a lovely one, and I love it. And listen, that was Mr. Adrian Cox. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Ray. Nice one, mate.
See you next time. Keep well, keep safe, keep lucky. Bye-bye.
Nice one. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.